Noam Chomsky spoke to Jeremy Scahill of The Intercept, and he weighed in on Trump's presidency. His take is absolutely fascinating.
You can come away with the impression that Donald Trump and his administration, his presidency, represent this grand departure from the way things are done in the United States historically. How much of a departure is the Trump presidency from the bipartisan Washington empire consensus, the way that the U.S. has been governed throughout its history?
There are some differences and many continuities. On the domestic scene, Trump is very effectively managing both of his constituencies. There's an authentic constituency of corporate power and private wealth, and they're being served magnificently by the executive orders, legislative programs that are being pushed through, which represent the more savage wing of the traditional Republican policies, catering to private interests and private wealth and dismissing the rest as irrelevant and easily disposed of. At the same time, he's managing to maintain the voting constituency by pretending very effectively to be the one person in the world who stands up for them against the hated elites. This is quite an impressive con job. How long he can carry it off, I don't know. On the international scene, it's actually more interesting. He's being lambasted for taking positions which, in my view, are pretty reasonable. So, for example, in the case of Korea, the two Koreas last April 27th came out with a historic declaration in which they laid out fairly explicit plans for moving towards reconciliation, integration, and denuclearization of the peninsula. And they pretty much pleaded with outsiders, that means the United States, to permit them to proceed, as they put it, on their own accord. And so far, Trump has not interfered with this very much, calling off temporarily at least the military exercises, which, as he correctly said, are highly provocative. He's been lambasted for that, but it's exactly the right position, I think. In the case of Russia, it's more complex. His policies have, in fact, been twofold. His administration has continued the policies of building up military forces on the Russian border, carrying out military maneuvers, increasing the tensions in an extremely dangerous part of the world. On the other hand, he has also taken somewhat conciliatory steps towards reducing tensions, and for that, again, he's been lambasted, though I think it's the right thing to do. On other matters, he's torn up important international agreements. The most significant was the Iran nuclear agreement.
So that was brilliant. Let's break that down. His first point is he put it in a way that I've never put it before. Chomsky says that Donald Trump is serving elites with his tax cuts, which went, 83% of the benefits went to the top 1%. There was a giant corporate tax cut in his tax bill. He reduced the capital gains rate. So he's serving elites at the same time that he bashes elites with his, speeches and his rallies and whatnot. And Chomsky called this, quote, an impressive con job. I agree with that. And it's the same thing he did on the campaign trail. He would rail against outsourcing and jobs being shipped overseas. I'm going to protect the factory worker, the forgotten man and woman will never be forgotten again. And then what happened? Since he's been president, 93,000 jobs in his first year in office were outsourced. That's even more than Obama. Obama was, I think, 87,000. So it's an impressive con job. He keeps convincing his base that he's like for the common man, while at the same time, just in an unbelievably clear way, he's serving the rich at the expense of the common man. And I think, to be honest, I think that a lot of it's not even necessarily that he's actively and knowingly doing, a con job here. I think it's more that he might be dumb enough to actually believe that the tax cuts are somehow good for working people, even though 83% of the benefits go to the top 1%. He might be dumb enough to believe that deregulating Wall Street further is something that's great for the common man. That might be the case. It might be the case. Or he just doesn't think about it and doesn't care. But listen, Trump is a relentless marketer. All he does is make his own case. So when you're used to when all you do is make your own case, he doesn't care about the connection to reality or the objective impacts of what he's doing or the empirical reality. He's just, I don't know, is what I do. I go out there and I make my case. He ran on, I'm such a tremendous businessman. His businesses went bankrupt 6 times. He's a horrendous businessman. He was born with a silver fucking spoon in his mouth. So Chomsky's right. That's a great way of putting it. He serves the elites as he bashes the elites. Okay. Then he talks about foreign policy. This is really interesting. He says, and this is one of the main reasons why, sometimes I can't put my finger on why it is I'm so hard on the establishment, even in the era of Trump. But this is why. Because they save their vicious anger for when Trump actually does something decent. So on North Korea, for example, now there was a time when he wasn't doing decent stuff. There was a time when he was threatening fucking war on Twitter, and I was going ballistic over it. And I should have. That's the right thing to. That's the proper reaction. But now with, it's going to be tremendous. It's going to be an amazing meeting. It's going to be unbelievable. Well, he did meet with them. That's good. That's a step in the right direction. I don't buy the nonsense right-wing bullshit position of like, you shouldn't meet with your enemies because they're your enemies. Of course you should meet with your enemies. That's how you make peace. So I gave him credit over that. But Chomsky's point is, really what he's done is he's let the South Korean president basically make peace. And while he sits on the sidelines. Now, I actually think the lion's share of the credit there goes to the South Korean president. Because he knows how to stroke Trump's ego to make Trump feel like, yes, I'm getting amazing credit for this. It's unbelievable. They love what I'm doing. And so the South Korean president says, Mr. Trump, you're amazing. You're great. You're making peace. You're such a great leader, such a strong leader. And then the South Korean president meets with Kim Jong-un and makes peace. So, but that's the right policy. But again, among the establishment media and among elites in this country, they hate it. They hate it. They don't want peace. That hurts the profits for the military-industrial complex. They would much rather prefer Trump's policy like with Yemen, where he's like, give all the weapons in the world to Saudi Arabia and let them bomb innocent women and children. I don't care. They would prefer to be on the brink of war with North Korea as opposed to actually having peace in the region. 100%. 100%. So he gets attacked for his most reasonable position. Now, on Russia, I have disagreements with Chomsky because he says, like, his policies are twofold. Not really. His rhetoric, I guess, compared to his policies, that's twofold. So his rhetoric is, we should get along with Russia. We should make friends. That rhetoric I agree with. What Trump has not done policy-wise is really work with Russia in any serious way. He's been escalating with Russia. We have U.S. warships in the Black Sea right on Russia's border. We have NATO troops right on their border, which is, of course, an offensive and provocative action, which is going to lead to a backlash. There's been more rounds of sanctions on them. I guess there's been limited cooperation over Syria, so maybe you could say, maybe a little bit they're working together in that realm, but still, I think the posture is still way too anti-Russia in Syria, because we shouldn't be backing the rebels at all, because at least 60% of them are jihadists, and you're playing with fire if you overthrow that government, even though Assad is not a good guy. So I have disagreements with Chomsky on Russia, but overall his comments are brilliant. because he's saying it's weird how the establishment gets most angry over Trump's most reasonable comments. That's the case with North Korea, and the establishment gets most angry at Trump's most reasonable policies. You know, when Trump said, hey, maybe we should get along with Russia, that was a scandal. Establishment media was melting. Oh, collusion, Putin's puppet. But don't you want to make friends with them? Like, don't you want to not be at the brink of war with another nuclear armed power? So his comments are brilliant, and it is going to be interesting to see what happens moving forward, because what percentage of the population is going to continue to be duped by Trump's tap dance on the elites, serving them with all of his policies while pretending to bash them and be against them? Not pretending to bash them, he does bash them. So his words are against them, but his actions serve them. How long can he keep that up? I genuinely don't know. I don't know. My sense is that since the establishment media loves to go after Trump, that actually helps him. It feeds into his narrative of, oh, all the elites versus me, all the establishment versus me, even though, as Chomsky says, he is serving the establishment. So we'll see what happens, but Noam Chomsky, brilliant as always.